So you were telling me the other day about your client who came in who didn't know that pensions were something that you could look at on a divorce, and she was very surprised by that.
Yes, yeah, I remember chatting to you about that actually. And we were saying, weren't we, that one of the most overlooked assets in a divorce situation is the pension. And it concerns me to think how many people have come to their own agreement without taking legal advice, completely ignoring the pension, which often can be the biggest matrimonial asset. I mean, this particular client I had, then the family home was not of any significant value, but the pension was a really significant pension. It was well over £1 million in this pension, and it was the husband's pension, and they'd been married for a very long time, and it was a very traditional relationship in that the wife had never worked, looked after the children, run the household. And I was discussing matters with her, and she said to me, "Well, my husband's already told me that's his pension, so that's nothing to do with me. And so, yeah, that's fine." I was like, "Well, actually, that isn't fine because that is the most substantial asset." And I think what people find difficult to understand is that regardless of the fact that it, in this case, was in husband's sole name, and all of the contributions had gone in from his income, it was actually a matrimonial asset to be shared. And had she overlooked that completely, then she would have come away from that marriage with far, far less than what she was entitled to.
Mhm. And I find it when somebody has a substantial asset in their sole name, pension or otherwise, that the narrative they are potentially spinning to their spouse is, no, no, this is mine. This is nothing to do with you. Was
Mm,
that the case for your client?
absolutely. I mean, the husband in this case was very aggressively saying, "That's mine, nothing to do with you." Very, again, traditional, "I've worked all my life to build up this pension." And people do often have a very emotional attachment to the pension. It is something that people see that they have worked all their life to get to that point. But as you know, the law sees it differently, particularly in a long marriage like this. A pension that size in a long marriage would usually be divided equally. And, as we know, there are various ways of doing that, because another thing the husband had been saying in this case was, "Well, you can't take money out of a pension. I'm not at retirement age. That's it. It's protected. You can't take money out." So I was explaining to her, well, actually, in a divorce situation, you can share a pension. So you could actually have a pension in your name that was equal to what he ended up with in her name, that it was effectively shared between you into two separate pension pots. And this to her was, she couldn't believe that that was the case. And they were still living together at the time, and she went home and discussed this with him, and he was not happy about this situation at all. So it really was more acrimonious than it needed to be, because he just would not accept that that was the case. Eventually, he did take his own legal advice and was told exactly the same thing as what I had advised his wife. So, they did actually end up sharing the pension in the way that we'd said. But, it is concerning that so many people might have just not even pursued that, or not even considered it as even an asset, on the basis that the common thought is, well, it's firstly, it's mine, and secondly, you can't touch it because you're not retired.
And if she'd stopped that conversation, hearing that first initial rebuff from him of saying, no, it's mine, hearing your advice, hearing it again from him, she could have very easily, and I've seen it happen, I'm sure you have, where they take their spouse's word for it because, it's been going on for so long. That's how they've run their
Mm,
marriage, like you say. And it's almost as if they're acting as a bit of a traitor to take some of that pension.
yeah,
So it's really important that people do take that advice, and that we as practitioners keep repeating it to them about
yeah.
pensions, because they're not glamorous. No one really knows
No,
how it works.
no. They're complicated, they're not exciting, but they are very valuable. So I think that's, something that we always make sure that we discuss with every single client who comes to see us.
Absolutely. That's so important. And for that client in particular, it was a brilliant result in the end, wasn't it, for her?
It was. She had an amazing result. I mean, she actually was very close to retirement age, so it meant that she could very shortly retire very comfortably, whereas otherwise she would have been in a very difficult financial position.